Welcome to A Women's Brew, where women talk about beer. Today, while Joe is away, I've gotten to speak to Matt Lincoln about his journey through beer and his feelings on imminently becoming a Brit abroad. I'm Tori, and I'm without Joe this week, but we are both still two beer-loving women on a mission to get more people drinking and talking about great beer. Come join us. Hello, Matt. You've just got me. You've just got me this time. We're without Joe. It's the start of beer festival season, so you just have me on my onesies. Joe's not here, but thank you for joining me on
No,
a
thank you.
woman brew,
A woman.
a woman brew.
No, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Anyway, as we've said before, anyone that's listened knows that you've been on before, so thank you for coming back. Some would deem you actually the nicest man in brewing, depending on
Can't say
who
that.
has the nicest man in beer. I think was actually the specification. Someone actually deemed you that, so there's a
Yeah, that's
title
it.
there.
Yeah, okay.
For anyone that doesn't know you, though, could you give a quick introduction to who you are and kind of what you've done? We'll talk about your bit background and beer in a minute, but
Yeah, so yeah, my name's Matt. Currently freelancing ahead of a pretty big move, which of course we'll talk about in a minute. So I currently do some writing and or the blogs and the news section for Unbarred. I also do some freelance kind of online beer tasting, so I host some of those. But previously worked full time at Unbarred as their marketing and sales ambassador, and then before that at Siren as the events manager, and then before that working for Foodism in London, uh, working on their beer section, so promoting beer within London. So yeah, I think I say kind of in and around the industry for 7, 8 years now, something like that. It's gone, it's flown by. It feels like I'm quite new at it, but I guess that's a amount of time.
I feel like I need. So we've had you on, obviously, in the capacity of Siren and Unbarred, and I feel like we need a hat trick. Need you to
Yeah.
like start working at another brewery or something, so we can get you on there as well and get the hat trick of breweries. That would be brilliant.
Well, yeah, next time we chat, maybe that will be the case.
We'll see. We'll see. Well, we could kind of talk about like your journey, sort of into and around, really briefly. But before we do, what are you drinking? What are you drinking and
Uh,
why?
yeah, no, I'm on Unbarred. Still obviously repping. um, but yeah, I mean, going back to my story, I guess you know this, and I've probably said it, and some people might have heard me say it, but Jordan at Unbarred was who got me into this whole mess, got me into the industry. Um, just a chance meeting with Jordan, really, and his passion and kind of infectious enthusiasm rubbed off, and yeah, that's kind of what pushed me into it. But yeah, so Unbarred Sofa Pale. Um, So it's a 3.3%. I wonder why exactly 3.3. We've probably had quite a few of these ABV beers. But actually, I'm quite grateful for it because it's a cracking beer and there's so much flavour in it. At 3.3%.
I
Um,
think I think some people have this like weird fixation with things have to be high ABV to be good. They have to, in order to have the most amount of flavor, it has to be like high ABV and really, certain like body to it and stuff. And I actually just think like you can it's more for me about the flavor than it is about the ABV. And obviously, the body can be part of that, but like I feel like some things are meant to be thinner, like in terms of the mouthfeel and all that. And some things can still have really big, bold flavors and be thinner and be a lower ABV. And I think there's just Joe and I have talked about it before, but I think there's just like some misconceptions sometimes where it's like, oh, the lower the ABV it is, the more watered down it tastes and the less flavor there is. And I think that is just
yeah,
so false.
there's this weird, or I guess there's this feeling that if it's thin, then that's a bad kind of trait to a beer, which it depends what you're drinking, doesn't it? I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
if you have the big juicy double IPA and it is thin, then I guess you would look at that as as a as something that you wouldn't particularly like, especially if you were expecting a big kind of juicy beer. But absolutely not. For me, the thicker something is, yeah, I mean, it's got tons of flavour, but it's not sessionable. And that isn't the point. But of course, when you want something that's just easy drinking, refreshing, and but lots of flavour, then you're going to head to this kind of beer. So that's exactly why I'm starting on it.
Excellent. We'll see what direction you go in. This would be really,
That's
really
it.
interesting. I am starting on. I mean, I've taken a little bit more of a heavy direction than you. So, what I will say is this beer is definitely far past its best before day. I'm going to preface with that. But I had a similar one of it the other day, and it tasted beautifully. And having the first few sips of this also still tastes beautiful. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to have it. The cacao and hazelnut broken dream, because
Nice.
I think, like, obviously when we first spoke, you were working at Siren, so I thought I would start with where I first met you at Siren, and I would go with the Siren beer, and I was like, what do I have that I feel like drinking? And it's been a day, so that's what I'm having. And I would have worn also my Unbarred Stoutzilla shirt, but it was in the wash, so I couldn't wear it. So instead, I'm wearing my Siren shirt instead.
I kind of went down. Well, I've gone down the route. Well, I mean, without kind of spoiling what we're talking about on the move, but yeah, I've got some UK beers and some foreign beers, and I've also got I've got a Victoria Sponge because I know you hate Victoria Sponge famously, which still blows my mind.
I don't look. I don't hate it. I just want to. I don't hate it. Do I think? And when people call it a Vicky Sponge, that makes me laugh even harder. When they're like,
Vicky
"Oh, Vicky
Sponge.
Sponge," yeah, it makes me laugh. I don't hate it. Do I think it's top tier? Absolutely not. No. I said what I said. It is not top tier. It's just fine. Like when you walk in, when it's somebody's birthday in the office and they go brought cake, and you go, oh, it's exciting, and then you walk in the kitchen and it's a dry Victoria Sponge. I get sad like immediately.
Yeah, I mean, if it was dry, I would, but a
They're
good
always
Vicky
dry.
Sponge. It's the session cake. It's like kind of the session IPA of the cake world.
I
Just
mean, to be fair, I'd try a beer though like that because I bet it because I feel like the beer version would be probably much more moist than an actual Victoria Sponge.
oh
So I'd
yeah,
be very excited for that.
you'd hope so, wouldn't you? Um,
Yeah, I can't wait to see what path that we go down with you today then, because I want to see if we've got like a lot of overlap, like where our overlaps are. That would be really interesting.
anything could happen. I like it. But yeah, no, I've tried to mix in like different kind of beers and snacks to suit the theme.
Nice,
There we go.
solid, solid. So I guess before we kind of get into like probably the one of the biggest reasons why I thought it'd be really interesting to talk to you, um, let's go through your craft beer origin story. So, like, what was the beer that you would say, like, if you had to pin it down less so to a brewery, but more so to a specific beer that sent you down the path of being like, I feel like this is going to be a big thing for my life? Like, what beer is the most memorable? It doesn't have to be your favorite, but the most memorable in your mind that sticks out off the top of your head. Because I didn't give this to you in advance because I wanted it to be very
Yeah,
in the moment, first thing that comes to your head.
yeah. I mean, I think firstly, I spent a lot of time on holiday in Germany as a kid, so I think without realizing it, and I was reflecting on this a little while ago, but without realizing it, I think that's what kind of led me or kind of got me used to quality. Drinking local German lagers, but even wine. They keep all the good stuff for themselves, and then they export all the stuff they don't want. It's just, I don't blame them. But I think I was just used to that. I got used to what quality was or should be at a very young age. And then I probably wasn't much of a huge beer drinker, um, you know, in my teen years, because we all started drinking before we should have. Let's be honest.
I don't know what you're talking about. I think that's just you. Speak for yourself.
um, but I wasn't much of a beer drinker, and I don't think I really was until probably my mid 20s. I don't think. Um, and I think it was probably because I was quite underwhelmed by a lot of beers that I could actually get and never really enjoyed them, apart from when I went back to Germany. Um, and then I think what got me into kind of craft beer was at a friend's wedding. I think I told you this before, maybe, but I was at a friend's wedding and he worked for Beavertown at the time. So this would have been around about 2015, 14, maybe something like that. His so it was my friend's wedding, but it was his brother that worked at Beavertown, and his wedding gift was 2 kegs of beer. I can't remember what they were, but I would imagine it was, gamma ray, neck oil. I don't think we even asked. When someone just turns up with 2 kegs of beer,
You
you
don't
just
ask, do you? You just go,
you
oh, all
go
right.
for it. And this will be controversial, but I remember hating it because I just never had anything quite like that ever. But what did happen from then on is whenever I had any other beer, it just tasted of nothing in comparison. And it was that kind of piqued my interest. What was it that I didn't like about it? I think it was going back to it. It was just the shock of it. I wasn't. I hadn't realised that that's what beer could be until that point. I would drink not probably drink beer when I was in the UK, but when I went to Germany, I would just go for like just classic lagers and and things like that. And from then on, I can that because that piques my interest. I then started to explore other kind of beers and as with everyone who's kind of been in beer, I guess, or started off there as a beer fanatic. It's a hobby that takes you all over the place. And yeah, that's kind of really how it was. I mean, I discovered then Unbarred. A friend of mine kind of brought around a subscription box that he got from a beer shop called Ghost Whale. And there was an Unbarred beer in there, and we had a few cans of that. I then reached out to Jordan just on Instagram because I was like, dude, this is amazing. From there, he invited me down to brew with him, and we just hit it off. I got the bug, and then just kind of worked my way into the industry from there, I guess. So that's kind of how it really started, and that's when I joined Foodism. Well, I actually started blogging about it, writing about it, getting myself out there in beer forums and things like that. And then I was, approached by Foodism to kind of help them or join a project that they're working on, increasing their kind of audience around beer and education around beer and working with London breweries. So that's kind of my foot in the doorstep, I guess. Yeah, there's so many beers I've had that I've just been blown away by. It's really hard to nail down one beer. But kind of whenever I do tastings, I always talk about, it's not always, when I talk about the best beer I've ever had, because people always ask you, when I work in, craft beer, oh, what's the best beer you've ever had? There's so many different ways to look at it, whether it's the people you with, the setting you're in, technically the best beer you've ever had. I might have had, some of the best beers ever on my sofa in my living room, but, the experience doesn't quite match, when you're out with your friends or, you're on holiday.
It's the
Uh,
atmosphere, it's the memories, really. That because, like Joe and I have said that before. Where that's why I was very careful when I said, "Oh, what was the beer that kind of like made you realize that was like a thing?" Because I was like, I don't want to ask what the best beer is, because like what I struggle with is when people say, this was my beer of the year. I feel like I would struggle to go, "Oh, this beer in particular was my beer of the year," even in that capacity, let alone best beer of all time. Because I think, like you, I very much feel like there's memories tied to it, there's atmosphere tied to it. And I could have a beer that maybe wasn't like, to say out of, I'm really bad at rating things, but to say like a beer a 5 out of 5 beer in terms of like matching all the things that it should match and tasting amazing and being great. Like you said, if I'm sat on my sofa alone drinking that, I might still be like, oh, that is banging, that's really good. But I might not remember that as much as I will sharing another bottle with other people at a bottle share, for example, or something that like I'm having a really good time at. So yeah, it's sometimes for me, it can depend on like what the weather is like, with like in terms of what season it is and what beer I'm having in that season and certain flavor styles. So completely get it.
yeah, 100. I think one of the best beers. I mentioned quite a lot of the time was the stout, and it was a collaboration between Westbrook and Evil Twin, and it's called I just get it off the top of my head, Imperial Mexican Biscotti Cake Break. It's
I've
basically
had
it's
that, I
almost like a
think.
combination of two of their beers. And we were in Philadelphia, and it started snowing really heavily. And we were trying to hurry to get to like a taxi rank. And it started to really get bad. And we literally just saw a pub, and we thought, right, let's just go in there and just have a few drinks and just wait it out. And it was a craft beer place. We hadn't noticed, we just saw it and just jumped in because it was the weather was so bad. Um, and they had that on the menu, and I just thought I have a bottle of this, and I can just drink it slowly after over a couple of hours, and yeah, it was incredible, and especially, such a warm, strong, you know, flavorful stout. When you've dived into a bar when it's snowstorm out and it's cold, just everything about it. As with my wife Becky at the time, and just everything about it was just it was just really nice. And we sat there for 2 hours just drinking and just waiting for the snow to go. Um, so that is one of the best beers I've had. But I think a lot of that is attributed to where we were, who I was with, just the right beer at the right time in the right place with the right people, and um, yeah, but it's still a great beer. It's
I'm
amazing beer.
fairly certain I've had it because I feel like that sounds really familiar, and I think I have. I think I've had, or if you're saying it's a mix of two beers, I might have had of the like one of the ones that it's like sort of
Yeah,
based off of, because I think actually I have had that, and I'll tell you when I have had it and I remember it because I saw a can of it somewhere and I remember buying it because I think there's sugar skulls like Dia de los Muertos sugar skulls on the front of the can, and my
I think
husband
that's the
and I
Westbrook kind
um
of variant, maybe. I forget which way
maybe
round it is now.
because it
But
was one of the Mexican cake. It was one of like the cake ones, and I feel like Evil Twin was definitely part of it. Because I found it somewhere by chance. They were selling like other like American beers and stuff, and just like I think I paid quite a bit for it as well because I found it over here in the UK, and I was like, I need to have it because I thought this is going to be the perfect thing. So Rick and I's wedding theme, we did sort of like it was a bit more like nerdy, but also sort of like Dia de los Muertos, like bright colors, very like all of that. So we've got
no,
glasses that had like our champagne like flutes had like sugar skulls all on them and stuff. And when I saw that beer, I was like, this is going to be perfect to save for our
perfect.
anniversary. I think
Yeah,
I
yeah.
saw it actually when we were in Cheltenham there's a shop in Cheltenham, a beer shop in Cheltenham that is, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head because there's so many. We just happened to be there on holiday with friends like a good few years back, and it's like one of the most well-known beer shops that are there. And we happened to go in there, and I just picked a few things to take home, and that one sounded amazing. And I was like, that will be great to save for our anniversary. So weirdly, I think I've had that one, and it was
Great beer.
amazing. A really
It's
great
such
bit.
good beer. Um, but just everything about it was spot on. And I've had a few experiences like that. When you're sitting in the sun on holiday and all these different things. So, but I think I was just lucky that technically it's a great beer, but it was also a great beer because of where we were. So, yeah, yeah. So I think that's kind of all of my kind of milestones. Not all of them, but yeah, in a nutshell.
It's what you were saying about like you know not being used to sort of having the flavor like beers with that much flavor and kind of being like, oh, I don't know if I really like this, because you're used to having something that just maybe doesn't have as much flavor, like something that's more commercial, bigger. Like, so I know from my experience obviously in the US, growing up in the US, and like a lot of people's default is Budweiser, Bud Light, Coors, that kind of stuff. And like to me, that doesn't have like a particular amount of flavor. So like when you actually go and have something that has more flavor in it, it can be almost like it takes a bit to adjust. But I've also kind of had this theory that I thought of recently through having a conversation with someone else, that like our taste buds change every however many years it is, like 7 years or whatever it is, and you can develop like intolerances and all these other bits. I don't know. People are going to fact check that and be like, you're wrong. It's not 7 years, but there is something like your taste buds do change and develop over time. And I kind of wonder if like sometimes it just takes you sort of like growing, changing, and getting a feel for all these other flavors that are out there for you to appreciate some of these flavors. Because it happens with wine. It's like you could have a wine and you could be like, yeah, like for me, I was like, don't like red wine, hate it, not for me. And then it took me actually developing, being into craft beer and developing those type of taste buds, and then going back and trying red wine, admittedly at a winery in Italy, to be like, wow, this is actually really good. And maybe I actually do like red wine if I find the thing that I like. But since there, I've then played around and been like, oh, maybe I like this a bit more. Maybe I like that. So some of it, I wonder what your thought is. Like some of it for me, I think might be just a changing and developing and growing of taste buds. And that's how we try more different
I
types of
think,
beers as well.
yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, I used to hate Brussels sprouts as a kid. Odd example, but I love Brussels sprouts now. I cannot get enough of them. But it's a very bitter kind of taste and sensation, and and I think that probably didn't used to. I probably would have liked beer when I was really young, for that same reason, because it's just a very bitter taste and sensation. I've not really got that much of a sweet tooth, if I'm honest. Like I'm more of a savoury kind of person. So I don't really drink a huge amount of, kind of like smoothie sours or even kind of big adjuncty stouts. Um, but I do love big, powerful flavors. So I love red wine. Um, and I think that does change, and it does change. But everyone's different. Everyone's got a completely different palate. It's probably I took a lot of influences from a lot of traveling. As a kid, so I was used to trying a lot of new things. I guess I've had quite a good experience with different flavors and sensations and things like that. One of the main things I find, and I talk about quite a lot, is for me, mouthfeel is very important to things. It's generally why I don't like something or why I do like something. Oysters, for example, can't get my head around those. I don't know why anyone would want to. It's disgusting.
I mean,
But
I'm
it's
not going to
all,
say, but I don't like seafood full stop because I'm not a seafood person. So I'm like, but I can understand why people might eat certain like seafood, but like oysters, I'm like, oh, why would you do that? I just think texturally,
yeah.
like, oh.
It's a real thing for me as well. So, and it's not, that I have one or the other or this preference. It's just there's certain things that I just can't get my head around. So that we're all completely different, and I think you do change. Um, I like to think I've got a little bit more sophisticated with age.
Gentleman over
Yeah, I
there.
don't.
Like pinkies
I
up
very
when
much
you're
doubt.
having.
Yeah, I very much doubt it. But I think I didn't used to like red wine. I didn't think I really appreciated it. When I was younger. And I think now I do have a huge appreciation for all those flavor profiles. I think craft beer has taught me that at the same time as well. Um, I didn't start off, I didn't, my first craft beer wasn't, some kind of, crazy, stout or anything like that. I think I had quite a natural progression through it, after originally not liking that beer, being taken aback. I thought started off slowly and tried a lot of things, and obviously working at Siren, where they brew pretty much every style under the sun, that kind of, I learned a huge amount from there, and then obviously I've learned from Jordan. He's great at kind of designing like the flavor, the flavor profiles, but also mouthfeel as well. He always gets that absolutely spot on. So I've worked in some great breweries with some great passionate people who have their really good they have these really good abilities to do what they do. So yeah, I think it changes with age and with what you're used to, what you've been, you know what's around you, and how you've kind of learned, I guess. So
Yeah, and Jordan, I feel like he's just so like he manages to do such like really tasty beers while also staying creative and staying fun and playful. And I think like some people can go like playful, fun, creative, and some of the not that they make bad beers, but the flavor almost gets lost. And some people can go really full flavor, and some of like the creative, innovative playfulness gets lost as part of that. But I feel like Jordan does such an amazing job of like balancing that creativity and that playfulness with like just really good tasting beers. And like you said, I feel like that he's put out so many as well that aren't necessarily like massively high ABV either, or anything. So you can like have a nice session off of those beers as well. So yeah, like big credit to
Yeah,
Jordan for some of what he manages to do for sure. And
I
he's super
could,
nice.
yeah, I could sit here and I could talk about him all day because he's just such a great person, brewer. He's so creative. Like you say that, you know, um, triple the three Bs is being launched next week, which is Unbarred's Brighton Beach Belgian. And the original beer was brewed on the beach, so he took a gas burner down to the beach, a little metal pot, brewed the beer, boiled the wort, put it in a cask, put it in the sea so that the sea would cool down the wort, took it back to the brewery, put the yeast in. It's such a Jordan thing to
I
do.
cannot even brew. I can't even like. I'm too scared to home brew in my kitchen by myself because I'm like, what if I mess it up? He's like, you know what? Let's go to the beach, YOLO.
Just hike it down to the beach, but it's also such a Brighton thing to do at the same time. And that's what I love about craft beer, because every brewery has their thing. But that's what I love about Unbarred, because they have
Brighton.
identity, and they know you can be super creative and you can do some kind of experimental kind of niche things in Brighton, and that's absolutely fine. But also he nails just like the 3.3% beers and lagers and stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of what I love about Unbarred, and I've been lucky enough to have his influence from, I don't know, when I first met him in 2017, I think. So yeah, it's no wonder I like some really interesting, like quite a diverse range of beers. So
Well, this is like shameless plug for Jordan, and he's not
yeah.
even like. We've just given Unbarred and Jordan like
I don't technically work for
shameless
Unbarred,
plug. It's great.
so I am technically, I guess.
That's all right. Like I feel like we've definitely given kudos. Like we've definitely Joe and I, when we've had like Unbarred beers on the episode, when it's not been like an exclusively Unbarred episode either. We're just like, oh, Unbarred is so nice. Like Jordan's so nice. His beers are so good. It's like I feel like we shameless plugged him a few times before anyway. So there we go. It's another one to add to the tick list. So
Yeah.
Moving on from that. So why I thought it'd be really, really cool to talk to you today is, anyone that listens to Woman's Brew knows that I moved here from the US a decade ago now. People don't really know it. Like, the podcast got shared at my work the other day to my team, who all call me beer influencers. Very publicly, they like to be like, "Oh, beer, are you beer influencer?" And I'm just like, I'm literally gonna die. And so this got shared with them at work the other day, and one of the guys that I work with was like, I didn't know you were from the US. And I was like, do you
Because
not?
you
He's
sound
like,
like
just
you're
never
from,
came
you sound
up.
like you're from the West Country. That's why you haven't got, or you haven't got what people think is in
No,
America. I
especially
didn't know
from
until you
Boston.
told me. Yeah,
Especially from Boston, yeah, like people don't know that. I've got like my Boston signs behind me and all that, but like people don't really know that. But I made the move here. I can speak from my experience of what it was like to immigrate over here, and the processes that I had to go through, and like the different changes in culture. But you are doing something very exciting that I feel like you can add a similar but opposite view that I thought would be really
yeah.
interesting to talk about. What are you doing?
Well, we're moving to the US, so we're moving to Atlanta in Georgia. So, yeah, my wife, absolutely incredible, has been offered a job out there. So we kind of started this process. God, it feels like a year ago. It wasn't that long, but it's just been it's been yeah, moving house is hard work. Moving country,
I just want to say, for the record as well, I called that you were going to do that. Like, literally, you were talking about ages ago, you were like, oh, it'd be so cool to move to the US someday. And then when you were like, oh, just, for work, I'm freelance now. And I was like, you're moving to the US, aren't you? And you were like, no, 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 no. And then what, like a month later, you were like, so you might have called it. We're going.
yeah.
I was like, I knew it.
It was a bit too soon to say. I kind of didn't want to jinx it, but yeah, we got around about the same time. Well, about the time that I kind of left Unbarred full time for a couple of reasons, but one of them being project managing a move, I guess, in a sense. So yeah, no, what's the date today? So we're like technically,
7th.
yeah, a month from tomorrow we are moving. So we got our visas. It's all been confirmed. I've got my Bank of America bank account.
Be careful, because can I offer you some advice on that?
Go on.
Never go into overdraft, because they will just like the second that you hit that overdraft,
Yeah.
especially if you're like a poor college or uni student at the time, they will be like $5 a day fee. I think they put a stop to that now. So someone will probably that listens from the US will probably be like, they don't do that anymore because they legally can't. But like, I remember paying so much in overdraft fees because it's like you go over without realizing. Be careful, Bank of America. Don't don't mess with Matt.
Yeah. Yeah. I think. Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's so much, like, honestly, and I think we went out there for a week, 2 weeks ago to kind of do a little bit of house hunting and all that, and what kind of dawns on me is that two countries that speak the same language and are so close in a way, are so completely and utterly different in lots of other ways. And just navigating around that kind of part of life was absolutely bonkers. So I'm sure I'm going to have loads of fun with that. But yeah, no, super exciting. Super excited to kind of discover more of the kind of the beer scene in Atlanta, what it's got to offer. Yeah,
So
have a
did you
look.
know? Well, did you know like Atlanta right away, or like was it a case of you had a bit of option and you thought like like how did you narrow down that you were like Atlanta's the one?
I mean, it was based on my wife's work, really. Her work has offices in Atlanta. Um, there was a few options, and that just seemed kind of the best one, I guess. I mean, well, naturally, we wanted somewhere that was nice and warm. So upstate New York really wasn't going to do it for us
No, I mean it would be really warm, like in the
in the
summer.
summer. Yeah, like,
And then in
really.
the winter it would be really not warm.
Yeah, no. Not for us. So yeah, there was a few options, but it wasn't really. It was nothing to do with kind of beer or food or anything like that. It was just that looks cool. Just almost like pointing our finger on a map and being like, "Boop, Atlanta, let's do it."
So
Uh,
so you're going over there, like, obviously you have to prep for the move. Like, what kind of stuff goes into prepping for the move? So, especially because I think why I thought this conversation would be really, really interesting as well is because this whole idea came from the fact that you were talking in a group chat about like the hoops you had to jump through with like some of your like the beer collection and stuff that you could take and all that kind of stuff. Like, what kind of stuff have you had to think about like prepping as a person that's moving that is into beer? Um, and the difficulties you've had with that.
yeah, I mean the beer collection is, as you know, is a bit of an issue in that I can take 20 bottles of beer for someone who's got a lot of beer. Working in beer for so long, you do kind of. I mean, lots of, especially in events, you see the same faces, kind of all these beer festivals. You swap beers, you give each other beers. You don't really, you kind of set these beers aside. Maybe don't drink them straight away. They kind of sit in your beer stash. You're not drinking beer because you're constantly, on the festival route. So you're not drinking, well, you are, but you're at beer festival. So accumulated a lot of kind of beers, and you know, I can't take them. So everyone's trying to help me drink them. I can kind of take a few. So I find myself kind of squirreling away the ones that are going to be harder for me to find when I'm out there. Um, so yeah, that was one, I guess. You know, I need to find a job. My visa will allow me to work, and just trying to figure out kind of the culture, because there is a very very specific beer culture in the UK, just like every other country. Um, and I think what I found out with America is it's not just about beer culture in America. There are beer cultures in individual states, that kind of differ from state to state. So, trying to figure out what that was and, I guess how I could fit into that. So doing a lot of research into that, as well as, all the silly little things like, how do you transport two cats across the Atlantic?
Yeah, that's got to be stressful in itself. Like when you were talking about like the ability to only take sort of like 10 beers as well, weren't you saying something along the lines of like you have to provide like proof for where you've put, like if you take a certain amount, whatever, you have to start like providing proof of like where you've bought the beer from and all that, the details of it, which like you didn't buy the beers with the intention to move countries with them. And I think even if you sort of had thought of that, you probably still wouldn't get some of this information. Like, what was some of that information that they were asking for? Because I remember that being like insane.
Yeah, I mean, it's just everything. I mean, there's some very strict, I guess export kind of import kind of guidelines. Um, I wanted to know, a lot of kind of stuff that I would have absolutely no idea about. Where did you get this beer from? I don't remember. I walk into a shop, I see a cool beer, and I'll buy it on the spot. I don't remember where, all the shops that I get stuff from. They wanted to know a lot of detail. Um, but yeah, I found it out, like a real trooper. It's got to be done. I wanted to take it. I think what I'm super excited about is to, we all know that beer is a real community over here, and it's exactly the same in America. So being able to kind of share these beers and kind of meet new people through those beers, that's what kind of really excites me. So I've got the opportunity to do that by taking some really interesting stuff over there and seeing what people think of, I guess, our beers. Although, I think, there's a very specific scene and culture in Atlanta. But yeah, just, I'll take some Unbarred beers over there and see what people think. I managed to grab some beers from a brewery in Atlanta while I was out there, which I've got sitting next to me, so I'll crack one open in a minute. But
Right. I'm going to have my second beer, which I feel like we shamelessly plugged Unbarred a lot. I'm going to have Stoutzilla.
oh, go for it.
I couldn't find my shirt because it was in the wash, but I can have a can of it. And I even went and I specifically got my Unbarred glass just for the extra plug. I've still got the big bottle of the Stoutzilla. I've got two big bottles of the Stoutzilla from
Get
last few
drinking.
orders. I
What
know.
happens if you might move abroad and you won't be able to take them with you?
I know. No, but see, I took, so you said 10 bottles, it was, or
20,
10,
I think it's about 20 we can take in.
20. So on my way back, so this is why it's different. This is what's really interesting, what I find interesting about it. So coming from the US to the UK, in carry-on, not in carry-on, in checked bags, you can take, if it's under a certain ABV, which like in terms of beer is, you can take like quite a lot of beer. So I can't remember the exact amount, but like I managed to fit across 3 suitcases at Christmas 48 or 50 cans and bottles of
Yeah.
beer. Yeah. I think our bags were more beer than they were
Sounds about
things.
right.
But that's why I was when you were saying about all this, and I didn't have to provide any detail. Like it was literally just I mean, they probably thought I was smuggling something because I was like wrapping it all up, putting it in bags and like Ziploc bags. So this is my top tip: is if you're taking stuff in your suitcase, you get really big, like in the US, they're gallon size or 2 gallon size bags, and you wrap up in bubble wrap or whatever, or you can put it in bubble wrap, then put it in a sock, and you are also using socks to move them, so you don't have to pack them individually, and that stops them from like banging. And then you make sure they're quite close together inside a Ziploc bag, so if they explode, the mess doesn't go all over your stuff, and then you just
Top
pad
tip.
it out with all your clothes. So that's top tip for me, and I managed to do that. Used all my socks and all Rick's socks to pad out all the beers. It was
These
great.
socks come back like just extra big where they've been like expanded.
Surprisingly, no. So I was really happy about that. And we didn't have any explosions, and I literally took so much beer back. So yeah, when I go back in the summer, it's going to be interesting to see. Like I kind of want to top that record, but also I kind of don't want to. I feel like I can hang my
It's a lot of
beer
suitcases too.
high. Yeah, it was just because it was Christmas and we knew we were going to have to take a bunch of stuff, and Rick had ordered some car parts, so we're like, we've got an extra suitcase, and I was like, well, if half of that is mine, then sure, let's do this. But yeah, so in terms of like what you found the differences between the US culture so far in Atlanta, because obviously saying between states it's even different, like let alone between two countries, like what have you kind of what's been your experience so far? Has anyone, when you've talked, have people just smiled and just like swooned over you guys talking? Because like Rick got that like when he first came to visit me. Every time we go back, they're like, oh, British people, they love it.
I feel like there was probably in the town that we're going to stay in that there's a lot of people that moved there for work, so there's probably not a huge amount of people that really cared that much because there's so many of us over, not so many of us over there, but no, it was so I did a lot of research when we went out for that week. I did some research and I reached out to a few kind of people who either were avid kind of craft beer drinkers who already worked in the industry. I was lucky enough to meet a guy called Mitch Steele. Just a little shout out. I'm drinking one of his beers, New Realm Scapegoat.
That's a really cool can. I like
But
that.
Mitch is an absolute genius, absolute legend in the beer scene in America, and he kind of sat down with me and was, amazing to kind of give me the kind of a bit of a down low on the Atlanta beer scene. From a consumer kind of point of view, but also from an industry point of view. You know how it kind of works, and there's a lot of differences. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. But yeah, in terms of the beer, I think it was probably different than what I thought. I thought it was going to be a lot of big hazy juice
Yeah.
and all the kind of stuff that we tend to drink, or you see on beer forums over here, and people are like clamoring to get the kind of the
Paying ridiculous
latest
amounts for
kind of,
like
yeah,
a
kind
can.
thick kind of smoothie sour, but I actually didn't see any of that out there. And someone actually, what's really funny is someone mentioned, so we land on the 8th, and someone said, "Oh, on the 13th, there's a beer festival in the town next to you." So I was like, "Oh, great, I'll buy tickets." So I went and got some tickets, and as I clicked confirm, I read the description. It was a celebration of lagers and English beer, and I was like, "I can't bloody get away from it, can I?" It's just basically bought
That
a,
was excellent when you hit the group chat with that. Oh, like, I've only just gone and booked a British beer festival. It's like, of course you have. Great.
hadn't even realised it, and it's almost the equivalent of going on holiday and searching out somewhere that does like chips, or a roast dinner. It didn't mean to do it, but I think what will be really interesting is to see their interpretation of our beer. I think I did have um, I did have a beer from a brewery that's actually hosting this beer festival called Good Word in a town called Duluth, and it was an English ale. And someone gave that to me, and I was like, are you doing this on purpose? Just because I'm English, you give me an English ale because like you want me to see what it's like, or you genuinely think it's a good beer. So yeah, no, I've actually been quite surprised how I guess there's quite a lot of similarities. I saw quite a bit of cask beer out there, which is quite exciting because I was really worried I was going to miss like a nice pint of cask.
It's
And I
interesting, isn't it? Because we had the same back in Boston over Christmas as we went to a brewery, and because there was there's a town that had a whole bunch of breweries around it, and I hadn't gone myself before because I think it was something that kind of had sprung up over the last few years, and so like more breweries had kind of moved in and made it like tap rooms and stuff. So some friends took me and Rick over there, and the first place we went to literally had cask beer, and I was like, I wasn't expecting it, and it was like British, like not British themed in the sense of like the decor or anything like that, but like they had all British snacks, and there was like a whole European shop out the back that had stuff. And I got on cask because I was like, I'm quite interested to see what their version of cask was. It was actually really quite good. And obviously this guy thought also that I was British. So he was asking me about, he was like, is this like what you're used to back? And then I was like, yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
it's very good. And he's like, I'm so glad that you like it. Most British people come in. I was like, yes.
yeah. I was quietly, surprised at, you know, what there was to offer. There's a really vibrant beer scene in Atlanta. I think I had a quick scan. I think it was something like 60 plus breweries in the kind of wider Atlanta. They got the metro area. Metro, there's a word I'm going to get you. So
That is sound, it does sound weird coming out of like a British
yeah,
person's
metro.
mouth.
Yeah, not really posh. So there's quite a lot of loads of breweries, but all unique, all super cool. There's a really great brewery that we went to called Variant in Roswell, which is kind of north of Atlanta. And that was kind of family owned, family run. Like the beer was incredible. It was a really nice, cool little place. So there's like a lot, there's big, there's small, there's kind of lagers, there's casks, there's, the kind of a crazy sours and things like that. But, super like interesting, kind of passionate kind of beer scene. And yeah, I'm excited about my first beer festival to be an English beer festival.
Will you give them like pointers? Will you be like, well, actually, this is slightly.
I
If
might
you
just take
really
a,
want to do it.
I might just take a pocket for the sparklers over there, just for when, for whenever they pour cask.
Well, I
Uh,
don't know what you're talking about because we're in the south. Those don't exist.
no, they're still the best way. Still the best way
But
to have
it would be
cask.
interesting if you were to show one of them like a sparkler like that, if they would be like, oh yeah, or like what their thoughts on the great debate is where they
Yeah,
sit.
I don't know. Maybe I should take some.
Ask them about it and just see, because I feel like that would be really interesting, just to see if they know much about that, or like what's actually made it over in that regard. Or you might get there and they're like, yeah, I already got you covered.
I think that like the main thing that kind of like kind of sticks out is that while we're clamoring to kind of emulate their styles of beer, they're doing exactly the same thing for us. I mean, obviously we know that craft beer, the Americans kind of created this craft beer boom, and it was all kind of based loosely based on recipes of English styles, but Americanized. But I feel like what I saw was a lot of those beers getting closer and closer to the way that kind of we traditionally brewed them, and what we're brewing is getting closer and closer to their interpretation of it, kind of at the start. So it was super interesting to see that. I mean, New Realm, which the brewery is it's right near kind of the city, I guess. They had like a really wide variety of beer styles, including a Bock and a red IPA. And I was really quietly surprised to kind of see that, because a lot of my kind of understanding of US craft beer has really been kind of big, juicy kind of IPAs and dippers, but potentially I've just been going to those specific breweries. So, I think it looks like there's a super kind of diverse beer scene out there. So I'm excited to get stuck in and see what I can find out.
Did you already sort of like, as part of your moving in criteria of like when you went over there to kind of like figure out what's a good area, like did the beer and food, because you said obviously you didn't pick it because of the beer and food, but like does that factor into your choice as well, of like it would be nice to live someplace that is in walking distance, or commutable distance to a bunch of breweries? Or is that kind of something that like no matter where it is you're going to find your way to it?
Yeah, I think the one thing we've learned about we spent a fair bit of time in America, but the one thing we learned about Atlanta is nothing is walking distance. It's not a walking distance. You can't walk anywhere, you drive. But kind of love it because there's always a parking space. It was beautiful
True.
driving. I mean, you can park somewhere. That sounds like such an old man thing to say, but there's nothing more stressful. And then I went to Brighton this week to meet up with Jordan, and it took me 45 minutes to find a parking space, and it
And
was
it's
so
probably like a
stressful.
space that's like this big, and you're like, is my car even going to fit in that space? I don't
Yeah,
even know.
exactly. Whereas, I could fit about three of our cars in, it was great. So yeah, walking distance we knew it wasn't a consideration. And actually one of the things that, we thought when we were driving around there is how vast it is, how just overwhelmingly big everything is, which we'll have to get used to because we're used to like quaint little country roads and, like you're about a meter away from the building at any given time. Um, but yeah, food and drink are super important to us. We wanted to find a place that had a little bit of everything. Yeah, beer is was definitely a consideration. But then, Atlanta actually seems to have a really vibrant kind of food scene as well. There's some fantastic. The place that we're hopeful of ending up in eventually is a town or a city called Alpharetta, which has got some fantastic kind of Louisiana kitchen, so like kind of Creole and Cajun inspired food. And then as you leave the restaurant, you can see two breweries. So it's pretty cool. Once you're in the center of that town, then you can walk, but I don't think anyone, unless you're a millionaire, can afford to live within walking distance of it. It seems, but the food scene out there was as vibrant as the beer scene, which is super exciting, and a lot of the food in the breweries, looks great, and that's another thing that kind of, I guess, stood out for us is just that these breweries are kind of more than just a place to go and have a drink. They've got a little bit of everything. If you fancy a cocktail or a nice glass of wine as a change, it's there. The food's great. Or if they don't do food, then there's a restaurant across the street that will deliver it to you. So yeah, great.
So I can only talk about my experience in sort of like the New England area. Obviously, I've visited other places. I've never been to Atlanta myself or anything even close by to that. But what are those breweries and tap room sort of situations like in terms of compared to how it is over here? Do you say that they are quite similar? Because I would say like in the US, in like Boston area, the New England area, I do feel like, I mean, I think culture is very similar between sort of where we are in the south of England and sort of New England area in general. But I think like tap rooms can be very quite similar vibes to what they are over here. Would you say that they are relatively similar, or is there big noticeable differences that if somebody were coming to visit that they might not be expecting?
um, some of the brew pubs are super cool. I think that's what I kind of really noticed. We've got a fantastic kind of pub culture out here. And I love going to the Nag's Head or the Fox and Hounds, and going there, especially the Nags, proper old school boozer, great cast beer, some great characters in there. You can turn up not knowing anyone, have some fantastic chats, really, really cool. How different the American culture is, but how awesome it is to have just these small independent brew pubs where the beer is brewed fresh on site and then sold right there. Um, I think I know a lot of tap rooms over here. Well, every brewery has a tap room, and that's kind of the same deal. But you walk into this seemingly kind of very small brewery, but you know they've got a really nice piece of kit, really nice kind of bar, fantastic servers. It kind of feels like a restaurant vibe, but with beer that they've made just just there. And I think a few people in the industry explained to me that I think especially in Georgia, for a brewery to sell direct, they have to brew beer on site. So that's kind of where that springs from. But yeah, it feels very I want to say inclusive in the sense that you can go there with a bunch of people, because the worst thing I hate is that and I generally have a lot of friends who drink craft beer, but we've all got those friends who really
Yeah.
are interested in it. And the worst thing is dragging someone or taking someone to a place where they can't get a kind of a nice diverse range of food, drink, snacks, and that seems to be a lot more, or seemed to be a lot more accessible in Atlanta. Um, that's for sure. I mean, I've been to some great breweries over here that are doing it, but it's it's a little bit harder to find.
I know that like sort of in New England you will get more um I think like a lot of places that you go to when you do go to some of these spaces, not quite tap rooms, not quite brew pubs, but sort of like the bar for that brewery, you can get more like I don't know the best way to describe it other than like in American terms, where it's like bar snacks or like appetizers, which like it would be like potato skins and mac and cheese bites and like actual proper food. Whereas I feel like a lot of times when you go to places over here in the UK, it tends to just be like literally like crisps or
Scampi fries.
yeah, scampi fries, stuff like that. I've never had scampi fries. I just had the bacon ones for like
Oh,
the
those are the best.
first time
So
recently. It was quite
I
good,
think
but you
I,
know
lo-
we don't get that much over here in terms of like the bar food. Is it like that in Atlanta?
yeah, I get like again, I love British culture. A pint of cask and some bacon fries. Like, there's something. It's so British, and I love it. And I think I'm gonna miss it. It doesn't sound like I'm gonna miss English beer because it sounds like there's a ton of it over there. But I am
You
gonna
won't
kind
have
of miss.
time to miss it.
Yeah, but yeah, having a giant warm pretzel with some cheese dip. You know, it's just something about that. It's incredible, and just some buffalo wings, or like you say, some really awesome kind of very American snacks. Um,
Cheese
yeah, I'm
pretzels
super
my
excited.
favorite. Literally cheese. Like I had so much. Like I feel like I had arguably too much salt and cheese because everywhere we went that had beer would be like, oh yeah, a nice warm salted soft pretzel and cheese dip, and I was like having it. Like I
Yeah,
couldn't see it on a menu and be like, no, that or like buffalo chicken dip, which I make over here, but you don't I physically make it. You don't just go out to places over here in the UK and have that on a menu. I feel like oftentimes what I will say is I'm very critical of buffalo chicken and buffalo chicken wings and buffalo chicken tenders because I feel like a lot of times you go places here and you order what you think is a buffalo wing is nothing compared to like US buffalo sauce. Like
no.
it is not the same and you have to like I'll take a bite of it and be like, oh, it's good but it's not the one, is it? It's like this is not buffalo. It's tasty, but it's not a buffalo wing.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, you're the, everything about it. Yeah, the snacks are just next level over there.
I wouldn't
Um,
even say next level. I would just say like different because I think like over here when I
hmm,
go out to some place that's like I know is more of a drinking establishment. It's not a restaurant with good beer. I tend to go. I'm going to have like a proper meal before I go there because I know I'm not going for the food.
yeah, you're
I'm
prepared
going there
for
for
it.
the drinks. Exactly. When I go to some place in the US, I almost find that it's like I might end up drinking more in the sense of for longer period of time because I'm going, well, I'm going to have my dinner there or at least snacks there. And then I can almost stay out longer drinking at different places because there's food available in those, like proper solid food available in those areas. But I just didn't know like if Atlanta was the same or if it was like different in that regard or
No, no, it's cool. It's exactly the same. I think the other thing that really kind of stood out is that independent restaurants are a thing. They're not here. You go into most towns in the country, and it's Nando's, all the chains. Um, that really didn't seem to be the case in Atlanta. I mean, they still had the chains on what I could be using the word thing, but like a strip mall kind of thing. So
yeah.
you'd be driving up and down the road, and they'd have all these different restaurants. But when you seem to get into these kind of more town centres, is what I'd call them, they had these independent restaurants. I went to this really nice barbecue restaurant, um, and they had a local beer there. And it was all local as well. And again, super interesting. It was, the majority, they did have some kind of mainstream options, but the majority of it, 70% of the menu was local Atlanta beer. Um, And that really stood out for me because you just don't see that here. If you go into most restaurants, they are chain restaurants and they'll have, kind of big beer and it was really refreshing to see these kind of smaller restaurants supporting the smaller, the breweries and kind of having that real kind of ecosystem about it, like working to it, having great food and some great beer at the same time. And it seems that people appreciate that and actually will pay money and go out and try and find those good spots. Whereas, that doesn't really seem to happen out here.
It is interesting that you say it because, like that, I don't think I really realised it until you said it just now. But I know, like my experience in New England, I think that we do have smaller restaurants, but it's just fewer and further between. Like over, obviously, where we are in the we do have them. It's fewer and farther between, and it's harder for them to survive. I think comparatively, and you're right. Like I think that on some level, a lot of these chain restaurants have deals with who they're selling in terms of beer and stuff. It's a lot harder to convince. I think we have certain like pockets of places. Like I would say Bristol. I could go into a lot of places in Bristol, and I could probably find like Lost and Grounded beer and some really good beers. But not every place in the UK has that luxury. But I didn't really think about that until you said it. But in Boston, I definitely have gone into small local places and have been able to get breweries from within New England just like standard, and it's not even like a weird thing. It's just more like I've gone in a restaurant, what beer do they have? And yes, they tend to have like a Budweiser and a Coors and a PBR or whatever, but then they
Yeah.
do also have like local beers as well. And I never really thought about that, but I think that's something that I've taken for granted before. I mean, even then, some of their bigger beers that they offer, it's like Sam Adams, and like for me, I'm like, yeah, right, I can't even be mad about that. That's a
Yeah, I mean,
decent
it's
one.
still,
It's still like
yeah, like you say, some of the bigger beers are still good
good.
beers.
Yeah.
So I'm just tucking into a bit of my Vicky Sponge.
How dare you?
I've no idea how it pairs with a lager, but I guess we'll find
How
out.
dare you show a Vicky Sponge in here? I did literally that name is great. I feel like where I what I love getting to talk to you about as well is like just ridiculous. Like I feel like you come up with ridiculous shorthand phrases, or you will champion ridiculous shorthand phrases. So like platitubes. The amount of times that that I've been in a room with you and we have chanted platitubes really upset people at Riverside. People were
Yeah,
not happy.
I feel like we were so tired that
We were just going platitubes. People
just
did
trying to
not.
bring
People
the
didn't like
party.
that. But we tried to bring the party. Some people weren't feeling it. Some people were. It was great. So the use of Vicky Sponge, excellent. But I do not. I can't co-sign you eating it, but I do appreciate the
Well,
shorthand for it.
classic English food paired with an Atlanta beer. So I
Well, you have
feel
to
like,
you have to report back. How does it work together?
oh, hang on. Yeah, I mean,
Like it's great. It's a
I
bit of
just
cake.
Asian beer isn't my normal pairing, to be totally honest. It's not something I'd ever really considered. But it's a lager, so I think anything with a kind of bit of carbonation, just I mean, cleans the palate right in for the next bit of Vicky Sponge.
In terms of things that are very uniquely sort of British, like what are the things, beer included, I guess, what are the things you're going to miss when you move over there the most, and what are the breweries you're going to miss when moving over there the most?
Also, I've already bought about 6 kilos of Yorkshire tea to take out with me.
Are you going to have us like you're like, here's my address, please mail me more?
Yeah, well, basically anyone that comes to visit just has to bring a bag of Yorkshire tea because I just don't understand how Americans don't drink tea, or even if they do, they give me that Lipton rubbish.
It's true, it's all Lipton, but I just want to say as well, for the record, anyone that says that we make tea by just like putting water in a
Right?
microwave, that's not a thing. Like that's not. Yeah, will I say we make it the most effective way? No. Do we have
No,
electric kettles? Not really. No. Uh,
Yeah.
but do we put things in the microwave? Maybe some people do, but that is not like the norm. We tend to have like metal kettles that whistle go on the stove. I literally,
Yeah.
since moving here, I don't know how people, I don't know how I did it. I feel like I lived in the dark ages before, like having an actual proper kettle. I had to wait for water to boil to make pasta.
I'm kind of, I we'll try and find an electric kettle, but if not, I'll just have to go with the metal one that whistles.
You can get electric ones, I think, nowadays, but they're really expensive and they're quite hard to get because they're still not common. I'm like, why haven't we adopted this yet? It's bizarre.
It'll be worth the money. It's fine. Um, what else am I going to miss? I mean, I thought I was going to miss cast beer, um,
You're not,
and
clearly.
yeah, no, I didn't actually manage. I didn't actually manage to have any cast beer while I was out there. But I did. There is a fantastic pub in Atlanta called the Brickstore Pub, which has got some incredible beers in. So if anyone anyone from Europe really is in Atlanta and they're feeling a bit homesick, check out the Brickstore Pub because they've got some great Belgian kind of styles, some lagers, British kind of styles, and they got cast beer. Um, so yeah, I didn't get a chance to try any. So I thought I was going to miss cast beer, but I'll see. I'll kind of try it. Um,
I feel like this will get you back to like to the blogging side of things as well. As like you could be starting. I'm sure it's already taken, but you could be like, oh, I'm Brit abroad, and I'm gonna start blogging about the experiences in the US of the beer locations and the food locations and stuff that give you the best sort of like feel of home as a British person.
Yeah, we did. I did manage to find some. What was the funniest part was going into a supermarket and going into like the foreign section and seeing British food.
Now you know how I feel when I like go in and they're like, oh, here's like peanut butter and here's the, and I'm like, what? What?
Like
Why is this
exotic
our rep?
food.
Like, why is this our rep? Like, you see, what's your representation in the exotic?
Yeah,
That's what I love. Is it's also called the exotic food section, and that makes me chuckle because you're like,
yeah.
I didn't realize it was that exotic.
I'm
Number
not.
one.
I don't think anything exotic about Heinz baked beans, to be totally honest. But at least I know I can have beans on toast when I'm feeling proper rough after a few too many beers. Um, yeah, no, I think I think my main worry was craft beer. I was super excited to um because I'm that person that goes on holiday to America like you and brings loads of American beer, but I won't have to do that anymore. Um,
It's true. But are you
but
when you travel back here? Are you gonna have to be like smuggling like British beers back with you when
yeah,
you
I
come
mean,
back
I'm gonna
here
have
to
to bring
visit?
back. So I've just reversed the problem really.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, what will I miss here? Yeah, I mean, I thought cask beer is my main thing because I think generally that is what I'll drink when I'm out. Even down in um when I was met Jordan in Brighton, this week. I had a couple. They had two casks on, and that's pretty much what I drank. Because when you're out, you can, and it's an experience you can only get, when in that situation. I'll miss Unbarred, for sure, because it's been a staple of my craft beer kind of life since day one. I will miss Reading. Sounds an odd thing to say,
It it is
but
like it is funny. I always miss Reading in the sense of like having lived in Reading and having literally lived. I'm not. I'm not really doxing myself now because I don't live there anymore. But having lived on the road of Nag's Head, and I can even say I lived there before it was a craft beer mecca, and they just did normal beers and ciders. And when it was when I first moved here, and Rick worked shifts and like when he'd work night shifts or weekends and I was by myself, I'd be like, I'm going to take my comic book and I'm going to go down to Nag's Head and I'm going to go sit and just like read. And they'd play, like, compared to other pubs where I feel like if I walked in, I'd get side eye, especially at that time, still having a very heavy Boston accent, and just being like a woman on her own walking into this pub. I feel like I'd get side eye in a lot of places, but like Nag's Head has always made me feel so comfortable. And like you'd walk in and there'd be like pop punk music playing, and it was just brilliant. So I'd sit there and I'd literally 2-minute walk down the road, sit there, read a comic book, have a drink. And I feel like every so often I go, oh, I really miss living in Reading. And I think it's because I miss going out in Reading and having the ease of walking like 5 minutes home. Because then I go into Reading and I realise I've gotten very old because I go, this is too fast paced for me and I'd like to go home now.
Yeah, I think I'll miss it, because we've got such a great selection of beer and breweries here and pubs. So yeah, that's definitely going to be something I miss. Brighton, although it took me 45 minutes to park when I went down there,
You're like,
uh,
I don't miss that.
still love the place, and kind of the people there. It's a totally different experience, isn't it, America? So I'm super excited to see what the beer scene, has to offer and get, as stuck in as possible. Yeah, maybe I could be that person that points out, has their own like TikTok or something like that, and just points out all the differences between Americans and English people.
I would love it if you're like weird things, weird things in America that Brits wouldn't understand.
The one thing, and we're starting to kind of get our head around a few things, but there's one thing that still baffles me, and I get very confused about when I'm asked, is ordering beer in ounces. It,
If it helps, I can't do the opposite. So like I know like a can over here I know a can's 330 ml, I know 440 ml because I know in like beer terms. But if you just said to me, this is gonna be however many mils of beer, I think like I do the exact opposite where I'd be like, I mean I don't really think in ounces either, but like I would be going, I don't know.
yeah, I just panic. And then they say, I'd order a beer, and they say, "Is that 16 ounce?" And I'm like, it means nothing. It literally means nothing. That's a weight measurement in my mind. It's not a liquid. So I'm just like, yeah, and just see what happens, see what comes out.
I can confidently tell you I'm not sure that ever changes. Like I still think in feet, not centimeters. So like Rick will say, "Oh, this thing is however many centimeters." I'll be like, "I ordered something and it wasn't the right size," and he's like, "Why didn't you measure it?" And I was like, "I don't know. The photos looked alright." And he's like, "But it says X centimeters," and I was like, "That means nothing to me." I was like, "I can't calculate it. I have to Google what is that." Or same thing with like measurements and cooking. I don't know. Unfortunately, I hate to break it to you, but I'm not sure that that's ever going to change. I think you'll eventually get used to it when you realize when you associate 16 ounces with a particular glass type. But I'm not sure like you'll ever fully, if someone just has a random measurement of ounces, that it will ever make sense.
I feel like 16 ounces is not a pint. It's like 400 mils.
Yeah, but the pints are smaller over there.
Yeah.
They
Oh,
are
see,
actually.
I'm never going to get the hang of it, am I?
No.
Just going to have to accept that I
You just
just,
go, what's the biggest size? Yeah, I'll just have that. Sure.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, they do help you. I think if you see like a high ABV beer, then, yeah, you'll see like it only comes in a 4 or 6. So I kind of, I kind of get that, but I'll never be able to get my head around it. That and the weight in pounds and not grams or kilos.
Yeah, like I said, I can't do the opposite. I struggle with that. So like
Yeah.
pounds, tell me real money. Um, some controversial things. I'm gonna crack one more beer open.
Okay.
I've not finished my other one, but I'm gonna go on to the next one because I want to have this one to complete your journey here. I mean, it's not really, but it sort of is. I'm gonna have because what is the most American thing I can think to bring to the table? A treehouse. So I'm gonna have breakfast juice. So yeah, that's a triple IPA because why not end on a 9%? But yeah, I thought
Well,
I'm gonna.
I've actually got a beer here that I was gonna go. Feel like I'm really like pushing the new realm beers, but
Are you
Mitch
shilling for
gave me
them?
a
Is that
few.
it? Is this a hint to where you're gonna be working next? Are we gonna see it?
um, No, that would be great. But yeah, no, this is Imperial. I don't know how you pronounce that. It's a Mexican stout.
Right, okay. Okay, yeah, you have to
Is it
watch the video
Oaxaca?
for that one. It looks like to me Oaxaca.
Yeah,
Shocker.
I think it's pronounced Oaxaca.
Oaxaca. Because see, like when I think Oaxaca, I think of like the chain restaurant over here that is literally like spelled Oaxaca. Like I would struggle.
Thomasina Myers, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is vanilla, cinnamon, chili peppers, and cacao. Um, so yeah, I'm finishing on 10%. So yeah,
Oh,
fair.
so not far. Okay, so I think that we probably evened each other out in the end. To be fair, like we've probably
Um,
same.
yeah, yeah, no, yeah. Mitch was, for such a legend in the game. Very, very humble, very cool. Got to see the brewery, got to walk around it. Um, it's right in the city. Uh, couldn't be further from where we're probably going to live. So we'll see how that works. But I think it feels natural for me to get back into the beer scene, kind of like full time, and kind of bring my experience, and hopefully I could bring something a little bit different. Being from over here. So yeah, that will be my move, but we'll see how it goes. Hey, either that or I get a job at Total Wines just for the staff discount.
Oh, Total Wines. I feel like if this is something that I didn't know existed outside of New England, because I've only ever seen it like in a few places in New England. And then when you had come back the last time being like, and then I went to Total Wines, I was like, yes! Like it was, that was a Yas Queen moment. Because I was very excited that there was a Total Wines there because despite the name, it is not just totally wine.
No.
There's a really good beer selection and it's huge and it's one of the only places that you can get. I don't know if Atlanta's different, but in New England, a lot of times you get 4 packs and it's very difficult to get mixed packs of things when you go to liquor stores. And
Hmm.
so Total Wines is one of the only places that you can actually go to get a
Single
really good
can.
selection of single cans.
Yeah. I bought
What's with that? It winds me up.
I bought this really amazing Trillium stout on the shelf. Well, I mean, what amazed me is the guy serving me at the till didn't even know what it was. He was like, "Man, this seems crazy," and I was like, "I mean, you're selling it, dude." But um, I actually also couldn't blame him because their beer section was like three,
Huge.
four wines.
Because it
Absolutely
is
mad.
like think of like you can keep me honest here for anyone that's listening to this that has never been to the US. I've never been to a Total Wines before. I would kind of like to describe it as a Costco-esque shop
Mm,
for alcohol because that's
yeah.
how like the aisles are set up is they are very like Costco-y. It has a big like warehousey type feel to it and there's at least like 3 rows dedicated strictly to beer and you can get bottles, cans, whatever, and they're actually like really good price points. Like nothing's really super expensive, at least where I was, nothing was super expensive. There was a lot of local stuff there that you might not be able to go to the brewery to pick something up because it might be slightly too far or weird hours or whatever. But
Mm.
you could get like really good single cans of lots of local stuff and Total Wines. Oh, it is. I'm so glad that someone else now has been there and has the appreciation for it. I think I've got like a bag that we bought stuff and it was just like a one of those recyclable paper
Yeah,
plastic
yeah.
bags. But I was like, I kind of want to keep it because it's just a bit fun, isn't it?
Super
Total
excited.
Wines.
Yeah, I mean, Becky was super excited because that gin section was like half an aisle, which she was super concerned about getting good gin out in America. Because it's not really a thing.
I think it's becoming more. I think like independent, like distilled, like spirits is becoming a bigger thing now.
Yeah.
I think there's like a resurgence of that, and cocktails and all that. It's a little bit more trendy and good to have
Well,
that now.
actually, New Realm has a distillery.
You were like, now let me take a moment to pitch you one more thing about that.
This is going to be like how everyone thought you worked for Siren.
Ah,
Do not
that
work
was
for
like
New.
Can I just say though, for the record, and that's what I think it's I've not done myself justice by wearing a Siren t-shirt today. I would have
Yeah,
been wearing an Unbarred shirt, but I because I like the Stoutzilla design. It's great. But yeah, that was my favourite. And you used to wind me up because we'd be like this, you'd be like, oh yeah, she's like number one fan though, so it's all right. And I'd be like, Matt, please stop. Like people it's like people genuinely think
used to enjoy just going along with it and just trying to like get this rumor going.
you're like number one
Good
fangirl.
fun,
She just loves
good
it so
fun.
much. It's just like I support local. I love, I like to be able to drive to my local brewery and pick stuff up. Siren's my local brewery. Yeah, you just fed into it, and I'm sure more people were like, "Look, Matt says it. it's true."
Yeah,
We had very good, like the tastings that you let. Like, I really enjoyed those. They were really good social events and stuff. And for me, I know I'm wearing the barley wine is life shirt, and I know that, like in terms of barley wine, I was never really a fan. And even the first maiden that I had, I was like, not for me. And then I had refashioned. I've definitely talked about this before, but then I had refashioned, and I was like, yeah, this is life changing. You hosted I think you were on hosting the we were in
mm,
lockdown, the refashioned night.
yeah.
And it was like a date night set where you'd get like two of everything, and it was old fashioned versus like the refashioned barley wine. And that was probably the first barley wine that I was ever like, yeah, I think this is 100% for me. And it was a really fun night as well because the guy that had come on from the company that did like the cocktails was super fun, super funny, and it was just
Are
probably the
the
most fun you
angry,
could have.
the very sweary Irish guy?
He was insane, but like in the best way. Like he was so fun.
Yeah, right. Those tastings were brilliant. Well, actually, interesting story. I didn't mention it, but the Brixton pub that I mentioned earlier, I actually organised to meet the guy through a mutual friend who runs the beer program. So a friend of mine, he's one of the brewer at a brewery in Charleston called Charlestown Fermentary. Yeah, he organised me to meet this guy. Turned up, met him, and he looked at me and he was like, "Oh, you look very familiar." And I thought, there's absolutely no way this is how I'm doing because I've never been to Atlanta. Um, Turns out he was one of the guys that used to work at Cigar City who
Oh
did
shit!
the online tasting when we did the Caribbean
Caribbean
chocolate
chocolate
taste
cake.
in 2020 and 21. So I already know someone in Atlanta, I guess. So that's and he runs, he buys the beer for the best pub in Atlanta. So I guess that's a bonus again.
That
But
is insane.
so I mean, it's a small planet, isn't
It
it?
is. It is very, and I feel like, people can believe what they want, or whatever. But I do think people kind of end up, following. You're where you need to be when you need to be there. I think
Yeah,
is how I feel,
100.
and that is insane. That's like, yeah, you just happen to cross paths with this guy already. Like that's really cool. That's a really cool
That's a
story
great
as
thing.
well.
It's a great thing about the beer community. I think there's I think beer is a community as a whole, but especially when you work in the industry. You meet lots of people and you do find these kind of connections and we're all working towards the same goal, to promote good beer and we're all appreciative of so much more than the liquid, what it means to us, what all the things we go through, all the hoops you jump through to create a beer. The blog I wrote for, well, I'm working on for Unbarred at the moment, about what's in a beer. It's more than just those four ingredients, it's the stories, it's the passion, it's the carrying a gas burner down to Brighton Beach to brew it on the beach and cool the wort in the sea, all these different things. And every brewery or brewer has these stories. And I think that's what makes it unique. And, we go through this life and this time in this industry and you meet these people and that's the best bit, and uh, mad, but kind of great fun that you gravitate and you meet these to these people and you meet these people that have the same outlook and kind of have been through the same madness as you have in your professional career.
I feel like that was a really profound thing, and that's what I should end on, especially because it's been over an hour. But like now, I've got some really trivial questions. Can I just ask you really trivial questions?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, okay. I want to know what are your thoughts. So I've got some controversial like US drinking habits and stuff. I want to get your opinion on them.
Right.
Okay. Well, first of all, pumpkin beer. What are you gonna go? What are you gonna do come autumn?
I knew you were going to talk about.
Obviously, I was going to talk about pumpkin beer.
I
Well, okay.
don't.
Well, are you at least going to collect them for me so I can have them? You can ship them to me.
I've had a few, and I don't think I get it. And I'm not saying that I like them, dislike them, or
I
whatever.
don't get it. That's your
I don't.
stance.
I don't eat pumpkin,
You don't
so it
have to eat
wasn't.
pumpkin because it's not about the pumpkin. The pumpkin's not. It's the pumpkin spice that it's about.
Yeah, see, I don't drink pumpkin spice lattes, so I just I've had one. I had one from Westbrook, and it was quite nice, but it was just all the ones I've had feel quite sweet.
Have they been US ones? Have they been UK
Yeah,
ones? Because it depends on the style as well. Like I'm not gonna lie, it depends on the style. Like certain ones, like when it's a stout, sometimes they can be really sweet, and sometimes it's just not. It's not the one.
yeah, yeah.
You need the
I think
actual ales.
actually this was a milkshake IPA, which I probably
Oh no, no, immediately no. Uh, that's fine. Okay, I'll take that as an answer. In a similar vein, how do you feel about rimmed glasses of like? Okay, so you've got like your pumpkin spice beer, and you've got a nice caramel
well they did
sugar
it.
rim on it. Yeah.
Yeah,
What are you gonna do when you walk in someplace and that is like that's on the menu? You can have that beer, but you have to have a like the rim on it. How do you feel?
well I'd probably go for it, but I don't get the obsession. We went into. I mean, this is a really random reference. We went to the Cheesecake Factory and had a lemonade.
How did you feel when it wasn't just cheesecake? Did you feel cheated?
No, with cheesecake. I also wasn't in the mood for a 100-page brochure on what to eat. Um, but yeah, they put sugar on the rim of the lemonade, but then they gave you a straw. It was mad.
That is insane because I've only seen that obviously on like
Hmm.
so in the I feel like over here margaritas are very standard like just margaritas and you get some variants but not a lot usually. In the US you have like every type of margarita under the sun. You get strawberry,
Yeah.
all different fruits. I love a strawberry margarita, don't like a normal one. Strawberry margaritas have sugar rims. Normal ones have salted rims. But I love the fact that like just a lemonade, they're like, yeah, yeah, sugar rim. That's fine.
Yeah, we went to a lot of places where they did that, and I was like, I'm not. This is an American thing that I just need to
To be
go.
fair, I've never seen that before, and I don't. And I've been to Cheesecake Factory a good amount of times, and I'm
Maybe
not
we
sure I can get behind that. that's that's too
yeah.
much.
I mean, bring it on, but especially in craft beer, I'm up for the weird and the crazy. So
Will you
yeah.
try it? So you'll try like a like no judgments. You'll go in like rim glass. You're like, yep, let's do this.
Oh, I'll judge it, but yeah,
Yeah, but you'll try it still, so that's
yeah,
good.
I'll still give it. I know I might love it. I might love it. So we'll see.
The Cheesecake Factory element of it just makes me laugh. The fact that you said Cheesecake Factory, because one of the people that I work with, he moved to the US to go work over in the US for a year, and he's I think just hitting his 2 years now, and he's going into his second year, and I remember he would just send me random text messages every time he encountered something weird about the US culture, and he'd be like, "Why do you do this?" And he's in Colorado. He's not even in New England. So he would just be like, "Why do you guys do this?" And I'm like, very different state. But I remember him messaging me my time, stupid early in the morning, and it was literally just like Cheesecake Factory, what the fuck? And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, why is there 37 pages but only 3 of them are cheesecake? And I was like, did you not realize that that was an actual restaurant? And he was like, I just thought it was going to be all cheesecake. I was
I
like,
mean, it's in the name. You'd assume it, right?
you might assume it, but he was like, there was way too many pages and not all of those was cheesecake.
There's a few kind of chain restaurants that I'm a bit on board with. We found a place. I don't know if this is just an Atlanta thing or whatever, but a restaurant called Lazy Dog.
Never heard of that. It's got to be
That was
maybe
good.
something.
It was like an elevated Cheesecake Factory.
Oh,
bit
that's your
fancier.
distinguished gentleman Cheesecake Factory.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I got on board with that one. And then there's a place called Nacho Daddy, best nachos.
That's an excellent name. That almost
Yeah.
made me choke. Nacho Daddy.
Yeah,
I just think if you're gonna make a business, especially a food business, and you're not gonna use a pun in the name,
you're asking
what's
for
even the
trouble.
point? You're not gonna
Yeah,
have a successful business,
yeah,
really.
fair play.
Well, I've said it, it's true. Everyone's thinking it. More controversial drinking things. When somebody gets you a frosty mug out of the freezer, how you gonna feel? You gonna accept it? You gonna drink out that frosty mug? You gonna say something? What are your thoughts?
I'm too polite. I'm British. I'm not going to make a scene.
But internally, are you going to be saying something, or are you just going to go, "Yeah, this is nice. I like
Oh,
a
I'll be
cold
whinging
glass."
to whoever's sitting next to me, like, but quietly so the next table can't hear. Um,
Obviously, you would never do that so publicly.
yeah. It makes me sad. I mean, if it was a lager, maybe I could get on board. But yeah, I went to a bar it was in Louisville in Kentucky, and not only did they do that, they had this. I know that so the bar was kind of you were sitting, and then there was the bar, and there was this kind of like almost like a runner, like a metal runner, and that was frosty. So you could also put your glass on like frosty ice to keep it cold.
Surely that doesn't really do much for it, though. It's just the
Well,
bottom,
no,
isn't
because
it?
it's so cold you couldn't taste anything.
Yeah, but
Um,
I just imagine that even if you didn't have a cold glass, like you'd have to really have it there for quite a long time for it to do.
yeah, I mean, I think the idea was you just left it there, but I mean, I guess it was so cold you couldn't taste anything, but then it was so hot that it was just nice to have something cold. But yeah, I wasn't on board with that. So
Okay, okay.
I'm gonna say I'll do the polite British thing and just
And go,
um,
thank you.
quietly moan to myself. Yeah,
Okay, so fine. They realise clearly a frosty mug isn't for you. They just hand you a can and they just go, there you go. Here's your beer.
I'm sure you have. I'd ask.
Anyone that's not watching the video, that was excellent because you just immediately like head shook. It's just
I
no.
can't do that. I can't. I, even there's some. I think is it Henny's Hoffa, Alchemist Hotop, and it says drink out the can. I can't.
Yeah. Yeah. I said the same thing because it is literally on the can. They're like, but it says it on the can. I'm like, yeah, I physically can't do that. It hurts my soul.
Yeah. Even places that say, "Do you want a glass?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
And so this is a barn dance. Like, that's that's a good way. That's a good way to lose a tip, which is in itself going to be a controversial thing. I'll get
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Is tipping? I had this conversation with someone in like the other day at work at an event, just about like the tipping culture in general and kind of explaining the difference between US and UK tipping culture. And I feel like that alone, that's going to be a massive, like that has to be a massive shock to you because I know that every time I even mention about tipping culture, Rick goes off on one. Like he is like, the US is ridiculous with this.
it's such a British thing. I'm actually to the point where I'm used to it and I'm on board with it. Um, but that's because I kind of worked within kind of like
Yeah.
hospitality, kind of there or thereabouts. Um, but I still think it's wild. I went into a Starbucks out in Atlanta and I walked up to the counter, ordered a drink, and they flipped the screen around and they asked me for a tip, and I was like, what have you done? I mean, I've come to you, I've told you what I want, and that your job is to make the call. I can't get behind there and make it myself. Um, so I didn't understand that one, but I think actually, if in a tap room in a bar, I'm all for for paying paying good tips to people that are kind of facilitating me and people having a good time.
I see. I feel like I can do you one better because I actually feel like I can get behind this, like the Starbucks thing. I go if I've got some change, that's all right because I think they're making the coffee. They're actually like you know that's fine. They're making the coffee. They're doing it with a smile and they're making sure it's right and all that. Great. And like I think they probably. I'm sure they get paid all right. But I'm sure like comparatively they're not getting paid great. I think what sort of like wound me up was when I was in Portland. I went to a place in Portland, and I'm not going to name where it was because it's not their fault. Like, this was nothing to do with the service. But I literally, all I did was walk in and I queued up to buy a bottle to take away. And they rang me up and they did the exact same thing where what comes up on the screen is, okay, select your tip. And it was something like, because over here, for anyone that's like British listening, it's like, you know, 10% is kind of like standard for tipping over here, maybe 15, like if it's good. You'd go like maybe 20 if it was like phenomenal, but like, you know, it's between 10 and 15% really, if there's tipping. Over there it's between like 20-25 is what's normal for like basic, even if it's terrible service.
Yeah.
And if it is more than that, if it's really good service. And to be fair to them, tipping culture wise, like they get paid appalling rates, and therefore they kind of do their best to give you the best service because they work for tips. And that's the whole thing I won't even get into. But I literally just queued to buy a bottle of something to take away, and they didn't even have to make anything. They literally just went boop, that is this much money. And I went, great. And then it comes up with, what would you like to tip? And it said 20, 25, 30 or more. And I was like, or I could hit the button that said I didn't want to tip at all, but everyone's looking at you dead on.
I would have hit that no tip button.
Rick was so mad that I didn't hit no tip. He was like, I can't
I
believe
would
you tipped. You didn't. She didn't do anything. She literally just rang you up. And I was like, yeah, but everyone was looking at me.
I can kind of get on board in that situation with like maybe $1 or $2 or something like that.
You didn't have a choice. It was literally like you
30%.
could either do none or like 20 minimum, or like more than 20% minimum, or like more than that. And I was just like, Rick was like, I cannot believe you just gave a tip to someone who literally all she did was just ring you up and charge you money, and she didn't even really talk to you. And I was like, yeah, but there was judgment. It was really hard.
I'm totally on board with, you know, especially if you're sitting at a bar and someone's constantly pouring you drinks and you're having a good time and like they're facilitating that. I'm totally on board with that.
Agree.
And going out for a nice meal. But yeah, there's some scenarios where I find it quite odd, but you know, that's I'm
That's the
British,
culture,
and we'll get used to it.
and you can't change it because it's such a big change that you're not going to be able to change that. Yeah. So I am traveling. So I know Rick and I are going back to Boston to see my family in June, and end of June, beginning of July, and we are looking for places to go for a week. Before that, we've entertained the idea of Atlanta based on your recommendations. We're also potentially looking at Nashville. Don't you like country? I'm not the country person, but I like blues, and I know Nashville's also very good for blues music. There's a few places that we're looking at, but like in terms of if you're trying to sell Atlanta to me or anyone else that's going to be visiting the US that is looking for somewhere to go, what are sort of like the best places that you have been to in your travels over there that you feel like, maybe it's not Atlanta or anywhere over there that you feel like the best places that somebody could visit in terms of beer or whatever?
Well, I mean, I've only been in Atlanta for a week, so I mean,
but just in terms of anywhere across there, from where you've gone across the US, like where are you like, that is the beer scene that also mixes with other things, that is like such a good place to go?
I mean, our go-to place in America is Charleston in South Carolina, and I wouldn't say necessarily because of the beer, although there is some fantastic breweries there. You know, Charlestown Fermentary, one of them, you know, Westbrook, obviously the biggest probably out there, you know, is great, but there's so many more. But the culture, the weather, it's laid back. Big fan of the southern states for the southern hospitality and the weather and just that whole kind of, you know, just ethos and outlook on life. I remember the first time I went to America, I went to New York, and then we traveled down south, and we mentioned that, and we said, "Oh, everyone's really nice in New York, aren't they?" And they looked at us, and they're like, "What?" But obviously, I was comparing it to London, and they were nice, but you know, it's nothing in comparison to the southern states. So I would always pick, you know, East Coast, you know, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. But yeah, you know, what I've seen in Atlanta is really promising. There's a lot of really cool people out there. It's really up and coming. There's some fantastic kind of independent restaurants. There's lots and lots of breweries. Like people are really nice, humble. We were sitting outside and having a drink in late February. That's a real one of the things we're looking forward to is that outdoor living um, kind of culture. I'm not
Outdoor
looking for
kitchens are such a thing over there compared to
yeah,
here, and like if you even think about an outdoor kitchen over, not fully outdoor, but in the sense of you build an outdoor kitchen in addition to your indoor kitchen,
you're mad.
because you can do stuff over there that is more like, it is so much more versatile, you have so much more ability to use it longer. Over here it's just like it would just go horror, you'd never get to use it over here comparatively.
Yeah, no, we're really, really looking forward to that kind of outdoor living. Not looking forward to August because I think it's so hot that everyone's just going to be so miserable. But that's what they invented air conditioning for, right?
And you have it over there, unlike
Yeah,
over here.
absolutely. Back, yes, Queen.
I'm so glad that you graced me with a Yas Queen on this
Yeah, I got
recording. I
one in
really
there.
appreciate that. And it wasn't even like a full gusto, it was just like just a
Just a
little
little,
subtle
yeah.
one.
No, I think we chose Atlanta because it's mainly, we thought it looked cool, but it's also a bit of a hub for the US. So by living there, we can fly pretty much to anywhere we want to, or get to anywhere we want to. Even Nashville, 4 hours. Savannah was 5, Charleston was 4, Birmingham, Alabama was 2. Like some really kind of cool places around in that area. So like we're super looking forward to that. We've heard that Atlanta's got a really vibrant kind of food scene. We saw a little bit of that when we were out there, so we're looking forward to seeing more of that. I'm looking forward to my English beer festival when I get out there. It looks like a
Mental.
super cool place. Um, we'll do another one of these, after a couple of months when I'm out there, and I'll.
Yeah, I will say this will be a part one, and when you've been out there for a bit and you've got some like more, I'm here, I'm settled, we're gonna have to do a
Yeah,
part two to see how you settle in.
yeah, yeah. I've Yeah, no, I think I'm looking kind of forward to kind of getting out there, getting my job in Total Wines. Um,
Dream job. If you could have any job, would it be Total Wines? Would it be like any particular brewery? Any ones that you're like loving? That you're like dream job, no limitations. I'm going for it. It doesn't have to be a brewery. Even dream job out there if you could get it.
Such a difficult question. I don't.
That's
This
what
I
I'm here
don't
for. The
really
hard
know.
hitting questions.
Yeah, I know, right? The culture's so. I think the culture is so different. I think that's something I need to kind of get used to. I would love to get back into beer. But there's so much diversity in the beer scene out there that I couldn't even couldn't even say like what that would be. I've worked for kind of, I really enjoyed being unbarred and being in that kind of like small kind of like tight knit kind of independent kind of beer scene. It felt very collaborative all of the time, and that's ideally something that I would like to, or Total Wines.
Or Total Wines. Let's just. I think we should just end it on that. You're going to work at Total Wines, and it's going to be great. And yeah, you're going to get lots of beers and send them back over here for us. I mean, we can. I can send you Yorkshire. You can get all
Yeah,
these all
we'll
these beers,
swap
or the pumpkin
American.
spice beers for me. We'll do a swap. It'll be great. Every
Yeah,
time I go to New England to visit, I'll do a stopover. We'll do a swap. It will be like a weird deal. Like we'll have to do like a weird handshake, and then
yeah.
I'll give you
We'll
the tea bags.
meet in a car park of a Walmart.
Yeah,
Uh,
because no one notices you there because they're huge, so it's fine.
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Inconspicuous.
yeah. Yorkshire tea for pumpkin spice
Yeah,
beers.
because you won't miss them. I won't miss the tea. It's fine. We've got this.
I'm gonna give them a go. I'm gonna give them a go. I don't understand it. It's an ingredient I just don't really get. I can look at a beer label and think about the ingredients, but kind of pumpkin spice. We'll see. Ask me in 3 months. Well, no. When is
No. I've got
pumpkin?
to. Yeah, we got to wait till it's pumpkin. It's got to wait till autumn, fall. You need to start getting used to saying
Sorry,
fall.
fall. Yeah.
And I need you to have cider. That is not UK cider. That is American cider, which is basically cloudy apple juice, but it's better. So you need to have
Right.
that, and you need to go apple picking, and then that makes you a full-fledged American.
I think it would have to be peaches in Georgia. I think I have to go picking peaches.
Yes, yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's like a thing
Yeah.
in autumn instead. I don't know. So you'll have to
Yeah.
keep me posted about what the seasons are like there. So
Yeah. It is seasonal, but yeah, I think I'll be a Georgia peach. Becky is going to be Miss Becky.
oh, I love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
Our cat Sally is going to be Miss Sally.
Oh, that makes me really happy. Oh, I
Yeah.
like that. Looking forward to that for you guys. But I look forward to following sort of what you do out there and getting to see all the fun stuff that you get to try. And I feel like I really hope that you like blog all of this because it would be super fun reading to see your
These are
first
my
experiences with us. Like, do you have a bucket list? I guess my final question is like, do you have a bucket list of things that you are what? It doesn't have to be beer specific. It can be anything. A bucket list of things that you're like you already know that you want to try.
I've never been to a White Castle.
Make a bucket list and then you need to tick it off and talk about all the things like when you try White Castle for the first time, what it's going to be like.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to try it. I'm sure I'll be underwhelmed. I don't know. Who
That's
knows?
the point though. That's the point
Yeah.
of White Castle. You don't have to love it, but it's like when you have Taco Bell. It's not like you're going there for an authentic Mexican experience. You're just going there for some really good
Going
bad
for a one
Mexican
dollar
food.
burrito.
Yeah, for the Crunchwrap Supreme. That's why you're going.
Yeah. Hobbs.
But there you go. Yeah, you need to go try a Baja Blast out there because you don't get that over here. So, um, work on your list, blog about it. It's going to be great. I look forward to it. So
Sorted.
I've kept you twice the amount of time that I should have, but I was just like I just want to talk to you about all the things. So yeah, I'm really excited for you guys. Congratulations on your visas, and I look forward to
Yeah.
talking to you once you've been there for a bit.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
So Jo is super busy this month. She is all over the place with lots of different beer festivals. So unfortunately, just as I said at the start of this episode, you just have me. But I was very grateful to be joined by Matt, a friend and a friend of the pod, friend of me. That I thought he'd make a really good podcast guest because I just thought it was really interesting, his move abroad. Obviously, that's the exact opposite of what I did. So I thought we could talk about his move abroad, and in a few months' time, we'll revisit and we'll see how he gets on. So I thought that would be super cool. Yeah. Not much more to say there. So that was quite a long episode, longer than I thought it would be. So yeah, if you want to check my stuff out, you can find me at adventures_in_optimism on Instagram or adventuresinoptimism@gmail.com. If you want to check out Jo and myself, you can find us both on a Women's Brew podcast at gmail.com. You can email us there, or you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, X, but we're probably mainly on Instagram at a Women's Brew. To be honest, I realised after the fact that I didn't even ask Matt to plug his stuff. I asked him for his plugs. He was like, I don't really have anything else to plug other than the Unbarred stuff I already plugged. So I don't have anything to share at the moment, but I've told him if he thinks of anything that we can share plug-wise for him, we will share it in the comments. So keep an eye on the comments and maybe he shared something by that point. But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. I'm really sorry that Joe's not here, and hopefully you didn't hate just listening to me on my own. So on that note, I've got some beers to finish and a holiday to the US to go plan now. So cheers.